Welcome, everybody, back to our podcast, Beyond the Prompt. I'm Onyekpere, and today I'm here with Chioma Onyekpere, who is a senior software engineer based in Winnipeg with a background in software engineering, data analytics, and AI systems. Chioma is also a TEDx speaker, workshop facilitator, and frequent contributor to conversations on ethical and practical use in education and industry. Welcome, Chioma. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you made it to the dungeons of University of Manitoba.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me today.
Of course. So I met you in May when you were doing your TEDx, May last year, when you were doing your TEDx talk. And I was like very impressed by not just by your delivery, but all the messages that you had in the talk. And I recently rewatched it, and you actually start the talk with presenting a scary scenario. So the scenario is a patient with serious health concern is misdiagnosed or like flagged as a case that's not serious, but in fact it turns out that AI kind of made a mistake, and so the patient, could basically suffer more serious consequences. And this, you explain, is because the AI wouldn't have been trained on cases like the case that appeared at the emergency that day. And my question would actually be, how is AI trained? I feel like we all had vague understandings of this, and from someone who's actually an engineer working with AI, how does AI get trained? And probably different systems get trained differently, and like all of that, if you can like give us a bit of insight.
Of course. So AI is trained this way. We get data from different sources. In this case, for example, it's data from hospitals, data from clinics. It could also be data during outreach. So this kind of data is brought together, it's cleaned, the relevant items in the data are being taken out of the data, and then they are being fed to the algorithms. Because if I just say AI, like what is AI? Basically, like under the hood is just like algorithms that you're feeding it to. So you feed it to these algorithms, you're telling it for certain cases, if you see certain signs, this is what the expected results could be. Or if you see this, these are the possible outcomes. So in this case, let's say we're getting all this data from, let's say, North America, and we have somewhere from probably Europe or Asia coming to North America. There might be things that are unique in North America that are not a thing in Europe or Asia. And there might be something that is a thing in Asia that might not be like a thing in North America. So if we're not training the AI with those kind of data, then it could potentially misdiagnose people. And then like when people are being misdiagnosed, they might not get the immediate attention that they need.
Okay, yeah, that's very interesting. That never really, occurred to me how, because I think a lot of us kind of understand because we use, or like at least, our students use AI, that we kind of think it's connected to everything that's on the internet, right?
That's correct.
But a lot of like AI systems work with specific training sets. And so those training sets, as you explain, can be biased in all sorts of ways, right? So we think that like, oh, AI just get all the knowledge that exists in the, in the universe. And that's why it's kind of more effective, but that's not actually the case, right? It's like it gets specific data sets.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's not that it's the AI. So AI could be trained to get data sets. For example, these days, AI is able to make internet searches. But at the end of the day, the data set is being provided by people like us. So it's not like generated out of the blue. These are data sets that people are actually picking out and providing to the AI. And then when we talk about bias, bias is not exactly bad. It's not necessarily bad. And just like I mentioned in my talk, bias could just be a choice. So if I prefer chocolate and you prefer burger or something, my preference is a bias. Your preference is a bias. So the whole point of it is that we want to introduce all those biases, all those choices, all at the same time, so that we can be able to have varying outcomes. So when bias becomes a problem is when it now causes people to be prejudiced. Because, for example, if we are not getting options from certain groups of people, we're not training the AI on certain kinds of data, then those kind of outcomes that we're looking for those kind of people would be missed. And that's prejudice. So bias itself, it's not wrong. In fact, bias should be there because it's just choice. And no two humans are the same. Even twins are not the same. Twins still have their preferences. So we just want to be able to have all those many options together, especially like for the relevant people. Because let's say if it's an AI that is being trained on music, for example, there's no need to start training it on stuff that has to do with maybe medicine. So the goal is not for you to train on everything possible. Just make sure that whoever that AI or whatever purpose that AI is serving is being representative of the people that it's serving. That's the whole point of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and when you talk about biases and prejudice, even also in your talk, you mentioned Brian Sinclair, who was an Indigenous Canadian who died in 2008 while waiting for urgent care at Health Sciences Center here in Winnipeg. And of course, in that case, that was a human error. And, prejudice, we could say, some argue, right, that it was prejudice. Could kind of reversibly AI help us prevent such scenarios if trained correctly?
Of course, like AI could help us prevent such scenarios in the sense that when, let's say, Brian Sinclair came to the ER and then like they explained their symptoms and everything. So for example, if let's say the people there are using AI to help them to make decision, because at the end of the day, humans still needs to be in the loop to confirm that the decision is still fair enough. So if there was a human, if there's an AI that is properly trained to identify certain things as an emergency, it wouldn't just just wave it off as he's just tired or something. There would have been like some pointers to show that, okay, this person, it probably needs immediate attention and, should be treated immediately instead of just allowed to wait. I know it could also be like an issue of being understaffed. I've also been at the ER a couple of times here, and the wait times are really crazy. And sometimes you can't really blame the healthcare professionals because they are understaffed. There are not a lot of facilities as well, but sometimes there are cases that really need to be prioritized, and then AI can help with that prioritization.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so this is I guess something to keep in mind when we talk about benefits versus risks. But yeah, as you mentioned, it needs to be trained correctly and in such a way to include data that is diverse enough, right?
Yes.
And so this brings me to the question of creating of data and how good the data is, because so for example, I read somewhere that medical scientists prefers to use male subjects rather than female subjects because females are more physiologically unpredictable because of our hormonal cycles. And so a lot of data on heart disease was actually applied to entire population, but it was the data was actually the research was actually done on males and probably not a very diverse group as well, right? So I'm kind of thinking with AI coming along, perhaps actually just kind of is going to help us highlight some of the problems that have existed forever, really, in science. And but now we really have to pay attention to it because we're automizing them, right? So maybe it's going to actually help us tweak some of these practices. What do you think of that? That it could be beneficial in such a way to kind of uncover some of these problems that have been present in the way data is anyway created in the first place.
Yeah, but the problem I can see in this case, first of all, is how this data is being generated. Because if they say they are not training on women because our circles are different, the hormones could be this way this time of the month and that way that time of the month, that means we are missing an opportunity. So when a woman is supposed to be diagnosed with something, it could be waved off as, oh, maybe she's in this phase of her cycle, or she's in that phase of her cycle. So it actually also does make, because if this also covers the women population, and you're not getting these data sets as well from women population, then there's a problem because you're training it to only identify it when it's with males. But that's not the goal. The goal is for it to be able to identify it both with males and with females. So it's just like a convenience way of getting data sets. And that's where the problem starts from. So we're not just looking for convenience. So I know like it could be convenience to do certain things, but if you really want it to solve a problem, then you should really solve the problem instead of just looking for convenience.
Yes, and I guess that comes down again to like pressure, understaffing, time pressures and time restrictions and all those things that are like, so the entire system kind of needs to be revised, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So I think so just before we start talking about AI in education, what do you think ideal AI would look like? I mean, we kind of, I guess, get the idea a little bit, right? But like, is there such thing as ideal AI, or is this something that like, we just need to, because I'm sure that even with all the ethical concerns that we're becoming aware of now, right? And the data diversification and so on, I'm sure there's always going to be problems that we can't see yet, right?
Of course.
So if you were designing like an AI now, how would your AI be trained? Where would you get data from? Like how to keep in mind like the basics?
Yeah. So what I would say is this. I wouldn't use the word ideal because ideal is relative. When we talk about how ethical AI is, it could also be relative. Of course, there are some things that just should cut across all, continents, all countries, and all of that. But different jurisdictions have different laws. Different jurisdictions have different values and different things that are considered ethical. So something that is considered ethical here might, not be a huge concern somewhere else. So it's just also like the difference between good and bad. So people define good and bad different ways. So the goal is just to find that balance eventually. And like, there is no not having bias. We just need it. We need it, but we just need to like find the balance in it. For example, we also need that balance of bias for us to know that, okay, if you're trying to use AI to start a war, the AI shouldn't help you with that. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't train AI on war data. You should train it on that so that it actually understands it. But now you like train it such that it knows that it should flag things like this. Because if you don't train it on that, how would it know what it should flag? Right. So we need all those data. And then we need to find that balance but then when we talk of ideal, I wouldn't say there is any ideal. I would say it's just based on the purpose it serves. And then the ideal would also be people like me and you and everybody out there calling out things that they see. Because sometimes like nobody knows it or nobody builds it perfectly. Even like the best products today have gone through phases of iterations, and a lot of them came as customer feedback. So in this case, we are that customer. And if we have any feedback to give, we shouldn't be afraid to give it, even if it's just like a comment we're making on social media or a comment we're making in the classroom or with our friends. But the essence is we still want to drive it back to the policymakers, the people in charge of those AI. But we are the ones giving feedback. And the humans, they are now the ones to use that feedback for good. But I wouldn't say there is any ideal, at least from where I stand.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So critical consumer feedback is definitely very important, and we'll talk a little bit more about it when we talk about our students here at U of M. So transitioning to this whole talk about education, which I'm super excited about, because right now, as professors, I think at probably every university are kind of struggling with things, I guess the problem is that in some ways students are more familiar with technology that is advancing so quickly, but on the other hand, because they kind of grew up with it, they're less critical. But then the criticism that's coming from professors who didn't grow up with this technology, it's often not as informed, right? Because we don't know so much about it. We're used to different procedures that belong to different technological environments, right? So what do you think are some of the actions that educators need to start doing today to prevent negative effects of AI on current and also future generations? Is there a few things that are like, okay, professors need to start doing this today and kind of keep in mind what effect that's going to have?
So first of all, you said something about, could it be that the professors might not be informed because they didn't grow up with AI? I wouldn't say that it is lack of information. In fact, a lot of things got improved by, us critiquing it. Because if we see everything and we just say, oh, it's good, oh, it's the best, then it's just going to remain stagnant. So in fact, even the people who grew up with AI probably are even less informed because they are just very accepting of it without questioning. But the more you are questioning it, the more informed you are, the more you're able to analyze the risks in it. So if anything, I think it's actually really good to keep on questioning it. I know all the LLMs these days are saying, if we say this, we might not be right. Please, you need to still confirm this. You need to verify this. You need to have human in the loop. But most times, a lot of people do not do that. And that is where the problem is. And that is why I said it's good that we're questioning it. And in fact, it's good that we have people who lived in the age before this whole AI thing, and who are also seeing the things that are happening right now. Because then it also helps people to question, is this really helping us, or is this making us not to really try to verify data? Is this making us just to be accepting of things that are true or things that are false? And then that is where it's important to make sure that students are being held accountable. Then if you're talking about the aspects that maybe professors might ask students not to use AI, the truth is everybody's using AI now. So even when you tell people not to use AI or grammar checks and things like that, they would use it anyways. So I think the discussions now should go more towards responsible use of AI instead of do not use AI. Because if you say don't use AI, they're going to use it anyways. So now we should be teaching how to use AI responsibly, how to question AI correctly, and how to even though these AI are constantly telling us, please fact check, make sure that this is actually fact checked. It's even when we were writing papers before now, we were quoting authors and everything. You don't just quote any random thing that doesn't exist. When you also read other people's papers, you also try to make sure that what they are writing is in alignment or it still holds, because maybe by the time they were writing those papers, maybe they were true then, but it doesn't hold true anymore, because there were a lot of things we could, let's say even in medical field, there are a lot of things we could say that we were sure this was the case. And then eventually we found out those were not true. So if you are using those old papers, for example, you would want to make sure that those knowledge are still current. They are not outdated, or better methods that have not been found. So I would consider it that way, that even when you are using AI, just make sure that you're fact checking. Make sure that there's always a human in the loop. You're not just taking it and running along with it. So if anything, questioning it makes you more informed, not less informed.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm kind of worried about another aspect. So we talked about bias, and we talked about the uncritical use and the problems of it. But this term, this learned helplessness, which is relying on something too much. It actually, I think I heard this name in psychology, and it actually comes from parents that are overly attentive to kids, and kind of that prevents kids to kind of gain sufficient independence to be able to later, be fully independent adults and so on. It can cause all sorts of problems. I see this danger a little bit with AI because a lot of the times when we're relying on a tool for which we think that it does a job better for us, then we'll just keep outsourcing even stuff that we could do, or even stuff that would really be beneficial for us to do it. We just keep outsourcing. And I feel like this is also one way to lose our kind of critical ability, because then you're just like, for example, you put in a prompt, right? And in order, like, for example, because I've been experimenting a lot with ChatGPT to kind of figure out how students are doing research nowadays, and also to figure out like exactly what you were saying, how to critically then attack whatever is, bringing out, right? Whatever is the output. And I learned that a lot of the times I can detect a mistake because I already know a lot about that field. So it's kind of sometimes it's hard to detect mistakes if you don't know enough already, about that topic, about that field. If you do know, then it can be a very helpful tool. And I feel like this is something that, I think a lot of students, and, I'm not going to just say a lot of students, it's not like professors, I think, are using it increasingly as well, right? We kind of start relying on it without understanding that we still need to do all the hard work of like learning the field, learning the facts, and only then it can be a useful tool for research, for example, I find that it's useful to just kind of remember some things of the stuff that I've definitely read, but okay, maybe it's been a while and I want to, what is it again? But then I also can tell, oh no, this is actually incorrect because I remember that this is not the right conclusion or something like that. Or then, I still know where to go to look for the original text. And so what do you think about this like learned helplessness and this loop of like over-reliance on AI?
Okay. So like it's not to name names, but in this era of social media, can you think of, does anyone come to mind someone who talks about a variety of topics, and when they are discussing something that is not in your field, you're in awe. Oh my God, this person knows so much. This person is saying a lot. I'm so impressed. But then when they begin to talk about something in your field, you can see like a lot of loopholes in what they're saying. Can you think of one person?
Well, I don't want to, but
Yeah,
a lot of podcasters and so on, I feel like, that are talking about all sorts of topics are like that. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the times I guess they have fact checkers. I wouldn't say fact checkers, but producers present who then kind of like check if that's correct, but there's no real repercussions if the information is incorrect, right? So, but exactly what you said, it's like, I've noticed that as well. When they talk about your field, is like, okay, but it goes the same with experts, I find, right? That's why I think it's good to have like experts with different perspectives from fields, because like a lot of the times you'll have, and like, climate change is such a huge topic, right? And you'll have, and I actually like to listen to perspective of people who are like on the other side as well, just to see like, okay, what, I think that's also good to be able to like listen to different perspectives and then kind of be like, okay, well, this person seems more convincing to me. It's also like the art of arguing, I believe, became very important nowadays. So, yeah.
So just as you said, I would also relate that to AI. So when you say, like, for example, you're reviewing something AI wrote, or you're reviewing something someone else wrote, and this is a field you're an expert in, it's very easy for you to identify the errors in it, or even if they are not errors, things that could be better approached. You're able to critically analyze those things. But then if it's something that is not in your expertise, you could tend to like not really critically analyze it the way you would analyze it. And I mean, before now, if I wanted to talk about weather, or if I wanted to know some stuff about weather, I would also be thinking of experts in the field. So I think we are also beginning to lose that touch of we're just relying on AI and not really speaking to experts. So I think even fields that we're not experts in, we can always find research more and find more information out there. But at the same time, we shouldn't lose that touch of finding human experts to discuss those things with. In fact, there is this trending issue back home in my country where someone was supposedly bitten by a snake and died, and everybody had different opinions and were saying different things. But then I was following this person who, they were now reaching out to experts in in wildlife, experts in agriculture and things like that. And then they were having really informed discussions, and they were putting it out there. So these are the kind of things that people should just also look out for, not just going to the AI and then AI just says this and then we just take it as absolute. So we shouldn't lose that touch of finding those people, because people are spending years in school acquiring degrees, bachelors, masters, PhDs, diplomas, and they are not just those things that AI is giving us in just seconds. That's not the only things they're learning. They are learning from the books. They're learning from their colleagues. They're learning from their professors. They're learning even seeing things happen firsthand. So we should also reach out to them as well for fact checking, or go to forums where we can find those people as well, especially if that is not our field. So if that is not our field, then that is the more reason we should make more efforts instead of just running along with it. And that is why I also think that AI cannot just take over, because we still need humans who are experts in this field to really okay, this looks correct to me. And then, just like you said, people have different perspectives for different things. So sometimes it doesn't mean that those things are necessarily wrong. It's just different perspectives of the same thing. So they usually say half knowledge is dangerous, because you might think you know, but the truth is you don't really know. You're just running along half-baked, and that's dangerous.
Right, yeah, definitely. Working with students, I also have, right now there's a lot of efforts, I feel, being invested by university to process plagiarism cases. And they have increased a lot, apparently, since the popularization of ChatGPT and other tools. And I talk to my students, and I have a sense that it's not just, laziness on their end or something like that. I think students nowadays are under a lot of pressure, because when I went, and I'm from Slovenia, so and I went to university a long time ago, but when I went to university, the pressure didn't seem so relentlessly present. First of all, I didn't pay tuition at my university, because a lot of European universities are completely free. And so I feel learning was more kind of relaxed in that way. It's not like you had to work less hard, but I think you kind of had to be that you could be focused on other things, because I went to art school and then later philosophy, art philosophy, but I feel it was there was a lot less stress on grades, there was no oh my God, you have to get really good grades to be able to go to grad studies or whatever, or there was just less emphasis on metrics generally. And I think here students are very petrified how to satisfy metrics. And they also have to work mostly because they're paying tuition and, they have to live and so on. So in my I almost like I'm hesitant to report any students that I suspect, have been using ChatGPT, because I really want to like talk to them as a person first and just see, what's going on. And a lot of the time students just say like, I completely ran out of time. I'm like under immense pressure. I'm so stressed. And I think we also have responsibility not to just as as professors, we have responsibility to not just penalize cases of plagiarism, but also to maybe figure out some ways to alleviate this pressure, because we are neoliberal university and the system, which I think is just creating this immense pressure. So do you think what do you think are some of the ways that professors could do that, to just try to alleviate this pressure before we even like start talking about like, oh, did you plagiarize this or did you not? Maybe that's like assignments, maybe that's like just different way of approaching how students work in a classroom. Maybe, I don't know if you have any ideas.
Yeah, so I would say when it comes to academic honesty and integrity, the students had the time to go to the AI to get those things, to write that paper, to write that assignment, to write whatever it is. So at that point in time, I think what makes sense is for them to properly cite it. Citing has been a thing. So I don't think that we should simply lose that culture because it's AI. Because this AI actually also learns on those books or those papers or those articles and whatnot. So if we are getting references from AI, if you are referencing something from AI, then you should cite that correctly. So that's where the problem is. I understand there's pressure, people need to work more, people are big on their grades and all of that. So I think the question now is, are professors okay with students citing that this came from the AI? And they still need to like put in some work into doing those assignments, because no matter how busy you are, like no matter how big time gets, we're still going to fill it up with things. So yes, I understand there is pressure, but if we can also manage our time better, then we should also be able to be able to give work that speaks high of us, give works that are of integrity, give works that, we're being honest about. And if we're being honest about this work, then we should be honest about how we came about this work. So the question now would be, are professors okay with students citing that they referenced this from AI?
Yeah, that's very interesting. Well, I think one big problem, and this is what like my policy kind of changed from like in previous years I had like, okay, you absolutely cannot use AI. But now I'm like, you know what, you can use AI, but I really stress that all my assignments, that the most important part is, because I teach contemporary art history and most of my class is artists really, right? Not even art historians, but artists. So I stress that the most important thing about paper is coming up with original ideas.
Okay.
But then I also say exactly what you said about sources. I say if I find a source that's non-existent in a paper, that's automatic F.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that's a bit of an incentive for them to go, okay, at least I have to check the sources, and at least they learn something that way, even if, and then, of course, the idea has to be original, which I actually find AI struggles a little bit with really original thoughts, So, and what I try to also encourage them that, the original, I always say, like, your advantage is that you're you. Mm-hmm. That's your biggest advantage. You're unique. You have unique backgrounds, unique experiences. That should be, yes, unique ideas. That should be that's your forte. That's what I'm interested in. Like, what can you come up with, having that amazing, unique combination, right? And yeah, I think like even just maybe encouraging them in that way, that actually what they have matters. And it matters more than what they can come up with, written in a perfect language on AI. That they matter, their unique experiences matter. I think, just maybe emphasizing that, I think has had like a good effects in terms of how students are engaged in the assignments. And And then another thing that I wanted to say is by kind of talking to students as more, as like a unique persons, rather than just like, we all have to like fill in this metrics and that's the end of it. I think it does then inspire them to be more ethical, because then I guess they also kind of detect that like, well, I do care, I care how they do, and I care that they learn something, and I care that they actually learn something about themselves as well. So I find that kind of like human touch. And I mean, I'm not saying, and this is not probably completely not new in any way, and I'm sure like most professors do it, but I feel like just shifting the emphasis even more on it has kind of been beneficial in this age of technology and distraction, and I also try to tell them, well, all the things that you're getting distracted with and, that you derive pleasure with, you can use all that. It's not necessarily garbage, because I'm, as a media scholar, I'm like, well, popular culture also tells us a lot about who we are and what we are. But like, we have to kind of have a critical approach to all of it.
Yeah, but I think at the end of the day, like, if students are not making the effort to also be original, they just want to completely rely on AI to do things, then what are they really learning? Are we just training students that have the certificates but no knowledge?
Yeah.
Or are we training people that we hope for them to get? So even if you're going to try to make your research from these sources, then you should also have some originality in it, because if nothing comes from you, then it's not your paper.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely, yeah.
So there needs to be some things that, even like when you're making references to books, to papers, to whatever, that is also like mostly after you've also shared your own thoughts, you've shared like what you've worked on, you've shared your own ideas and things like that. And then you can now reference or cite other sources to back up what you're saying. So it should be more of a backup than it's doing the work itself. Because I don't think like foundational or school knowledge would ever go out of fashion, because that is even how we're able to still come up with all these things. Because if there is no originality in us, then how are we going to make things happen? Then things are just going to remain as they are. So we still need that originality for us to still have that innovative mindset. We need that originality for us to like just not be people who have the papers, but we can't defend the papers, because then it doesn't make sense.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and I think I read somewhere that, now we're creating papers that are written by AI, and then they're graded by AI, because a lot of professors are grading even with AI, or even they're encouraged to do that, right? And then that all feeds back into AI, right?
Yeah.
And this is how things fall apart. Like knowledge systems kind of fall apart, because I was listening to an interesting talk. I'm afraid I can't remember the graduate student who gave the talk right now. I can't remember her name, but there was it was basically, she was explaining how when you kind of create a loop between two AI systems, they really quickly, the meaning really quickly starts to disintegrate. So you always have to provide fresh human-created data in order for the entropy to decrease. But if you have like kind of closed loop within AI systems, then the entropy increases really quickly.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you're now, exactly as you said, like if we're now producing all this like AI stuff, and then like we feed it back to the AI, and because we're always training AI as well, right? But then we still expect it to be working well enough. That's not going to happen, right?
Exactly. Because it's just like as a software engineer, there is one of these big platforms we use for asking questions. It's called Stack Overflow. So let's say a few years back, as an engineer, as a developer, if you had a question, you would go to Stack Overflow, either try to look for existing questions and see if they have the answers you're looking for, or you could ask a question. But these days, like, nobody is really contributing to Stack Overflow as much as they really did in the past. And Stack Overflow was one of the platforms that AI is used to train, to develop. So if we're not putting out those data there, then what is the AI learning on?
Yeah.
It's learning on itself. It's just like garbage in, garbage out, on itself. So like, where are we heading? I know like these days we also like have it on code editors. It's reading more code that we're writing, but mostly more AI code.
Yeah.
I'm also guilty of some of these things. I'm not saying that I'm exonerated, but that is just the reality of what is happening right now.
Definitely. And then speaking of like, plagiarism and how to deal with it, is there a good kind of reliable tool for professors to be able to tell whether students have used ChatGPT and also to what extent? Because I think nowadays a lot of professors are kind of like, they're reading papers and they're like kind of just trying to decide, okay, this looks like it's been written by, but it's really hard to, is there like a reliable tool that you could use?
As far as I know, I wouldn't say yes. Like there are tools out there that could look for patterns. Like, does this look? Yeah, I've used one of those tools. I actually wrote something by myself.
Oh, really?
And then I put it on that tool, and then it's like, this is 88% AI.
All right.
Excuse you.
So not great. Yeah.
I wrote this by myself. But I think like, as someone who uses AI, there are certain things I see, even though I don't have 100% evidence, I can tell.
What are those things? Yeah.
Because let's say I interact with you all the time. We're speaking all the time. I know how your line of thoughts go. I know how you construct your words. I know how you construct your sentences and all of that. And then even when because sometimes how people speak might be different from how they write. But I also know how they write. And then I see something different. Especially like, because I also know how the typical AI writes. So I see something, it looks more like how AI writes than how you do. Like, I have a lot of examples from them in my personal life. I know like people I know how they speak, how they talk. And then I see like some posts that they wrote on LinkedIn, on some posts that they wrote on Facebook. And I just know because I know these people.
Okay.
Yeah. But if there are people that I don't know, probably I might not be able to tell. I may suspect. But if these are people I'm always interacting with, that's where I'm human. I'm able to like, understand your level of grammar. I'm able to understand how your line of thought flows. I'm able to understand your choice of words. And then I know that, yes, maybe when we have like all these grammar checks and things like that, they can also help rewrite grammar. But it can't rewrite your grammar so much that it just doesn't sound like you.
Right.
So for me, that's how I can tell.
Okay.
For people that I know. For people that I don't know, it's a 50-50.
Right.
I could be able to tell, maybe not. But if they are my friends, like sometimes like I just tease them. Maybe I see something that they posted and then I'm calling them on phone and I'll be like, I saw your AI generated post, and then we just laugh it off and things like, because I know them.
Right.
Yeah. But for people I don't know, maybe I could look for cues, but those cues might not be enough.
It's not reliable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is, I think, a big struggle because I think you can't, because then like we not only, okay, you report a student that you suspect, then there's no real protocol there to how to then figure out whether this is 100% reliable.
Yeah.
Even if you use one of these, I think there's even like way to, I don't know if this is correct, but like I think you can even like copy paste it in ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT if this is likely to be, so it's like everything is kind of like a mess and crazy. So I guess the best way would be to be able to like know your students and kind of know their writing before they submit. So I do some in-class writing for that purpose, and also to kind of relax them a little bit in terms of like, okay, not every sentence has to be perfect. It's more important how you express ideas. We have a lot of students that English is not their first language, right? Is English is probably not your is it your first?
It's a first language in
Nigeria.
Nigeria.
It is a first language. Yeah. Okay. For me, it's not. So I kind of like also sympathize with a lot of students who are, but I also try to dispel their insecurities. I also try to say, I actually assigned a biography by Marina Abramovic, who's like a Balkan artist, but now is world famous. But I think the way she speaks and the way her book is even written, I suspect that, she had help with writing it, but the way the language is functioning in the book, I suspect that she was maybe writing the majority of it, because the way it's written is kind of very similar to the way she speaks. And I find that so interesting. I find that that's what makes the book good. It's not the content of it. The content is also very fascinating, but the style is very cool in that way because it's so unique. And I also try to tell students, even if English is not your first language, even if, that creates a certain rhythm in writing that can be really cool and really interesting. And, even if the grammar is not always perfect, or, even now Word has embedded AI component, and they're trying to finish all your sentences and thoughts. And I'm just always like, God,
it's everywhere.
I don't need you to tell me what to think.
Even on emails, everywhere.
On emails, it's brutal. Even though I do find, because we've bureaucratized all the systems so much, it can maybe be useful to just deal with some kind of mindless bureaucracy. But but other than that, I do enjoy when I see personality. In the writing.
Yeah, I think that's the right term, personality. And then there's some things that some of these AI do, like sometimes if you ask them to write you something, like they go to verbals, they say even things that are not really, it's not that, it might not be totally, it might be in context. It's not that it's totally out of context, but it just doesn't serve any purpose. You could do without those. So sometimes being verbose could also be an indicator that, because most people don't like writing things that are too long anyways. They would just prefer to write as tight as possible. People speak more than they write. So if I'm seeing a lot of verbose language, it could also be pointer or something it's sometimes the one that is so obvious is if it's saying something that is out of sync with what the topic is about. I know that sometimes humans also do this, but it's without these grammar checks and everything, it's now less likely that people would begin to say things that are not related to what they are writing about. So that's also another cue. I used to know that probably somebody might have used AI in writing.
Definitely, yeah. I'm trying to tell them that okay, can you just check the spelling, but even with grammar, kind of just try to keep it as is, or just pay attention to I always tell them, even don't just, this is another danger I feel because what you can do is you just copy paste text into ChatGPT and then it just throws out a completely new version, and you don't even track you don't even track what changes have been made. So I say, okay, at least the prompt should be underline changes, so that you at least see what changes have been made and if they make sense, because your version might be way better. So why would you just rely on thinking, okay, well, this version is now what I'm going to use.
Yeah, because sometimes I do that. Let's say I want to pass a message at work. Sometimes I would write what I want to write, but I also want to make sure that I'm, let's say, polite enough. And then I put it on AI and say, maybe is this polite enough or something? And then it now says, this is a better version. And most times it just doesn't sound like me.
Totally.
It's just totally going out of point. it's just trying to say so many things that doesn't even make sense to me anymore.
Right.
So maybe I might pick one or two things from there, or I could just skip my original version. So it's always like to keep to pay attention to things like that. And for example, even like the AI that is on emails, sometimes I receive emails and it's offers to help me write my emails, and then I try to see what it will write. Nope. This is not it. And then there are sometimes it's also actually helpful. Yeah. Because before now, I just didn't like responding to emails because I'm like, am I addressing everything I need to address? But these days, it's also helping me to be sure that I'm addressing all the things I need to address in the email. So I wouldn't say don't use at all, but just make sure that when you generate those things, they actually still make sense. And if possible, they still sound like you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, cool. Can I ask you like a question that's a bit offbeat? Okay. What do you think of like AI becoming conscious from a perspective of an engineer?
Well, right now we're not there.
Yeah.
But I was actually having this conversation with a friend a few days back, and I was just randomly saying, she's also in tech. So I was telling her how, what if some of these things that happen in some of these movies just begin to happen in reality one day? Like there's Megan, there's Mother. In fact, one of the movies I watched, it's called Mother. And I
watched that.
Oh, you did? Yeah. And I'm like, what if all this AI goes rogue and they're like, I don't like humanity anymore. Let's end them. So I don't know. Like we're obviously not there right now. I don't know what might happen in the future. Like even if you think of right now and 15 years back, if you took all the technology we had right now and went back to, let's say, 2010 or 2011, it would be like, how did all these things happen? If we could time travel and you took some of the technology we have now back to 2010, like, people are going to look at you like you're some sort of demigod or something like that. We don't even realize all the things that are happening. They are so incremental that we miss them. But if you think back a decade, if you think back 5 years ago, you can see how far we've come. So I don't know if we're ever going to get there or not. I just know that we're not there.
Yeah.
And I also just like being polite to my AI. So just in case it goes rogue, remember I was polite.
Oh my God, that's kind of dark, yeah. And like there's also a lot of talk that we hear about, well, actually not talk, but there's been a lot of investment made into the technology, right? So like data centers are being built, everything is kind of going towards this tendency of optimizing it with AI. Do you think the AI bubble will burst at some point? Or do you think it's going to be one of those technologies that's just going to keep growing and I think
it's just going to keep growing. The thing is, we're not at that point where AI can do without us. If we were, like, a lot of companies would have laid off people like me. Mm-hmm. But we're not there yet. We still need humans there. So no matter how much we automate things right now, no matter how much we orchestrate things right now, we still need humans. So in the future, like, I don't think we would ever get to that point where we do not need humans somewhere in the loop. Because, for example, humans are the ones to create those AI. Humans are the ones to monitor how they are working. Humans are the ones to monitor the outputs. And a lot of times, humans also have to do a huge amount of the work as well. So right now, like, we're not there, and it doesn't look like we're getting there anytime soon. Because if not, like, people like me would have long lost their jobs anyways. Because we have AIs that can just generate codes and things like that. But even when I use AI to write code, sometimes I just get frustrated. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do this by myself. Like, because I have that experience and I can test it and I can understand what I'm expecting to happen. So I know like one of the good ways to get AI to do the things you want for you is to like give it a really good prompt or make sure that your pipeline is really like tight. But no matter how good your prompt is, no matter how tight your pipeline is, we still need humans. And I don't think we're getting to that point anytime soon where we don't, because right now AI is being trained to perform the tasks we are doing right now perfectly. But in the future, we would start building different kinds of things. And then we still need to train AI to learn how to do those different kinds of things. So I think AI will also be trying to catch up the way humans are trying to catch up. So for AI to get there, it means that even we humans are no longer improving. We're no longer innovating. That means the AIs are now so good that it just knows how to do everything. And I don't think we're getting there anytime soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. And just a last kind of question. For students that are worried, how they're going to be relevant, and this, I guess, connects to what you just said, what skills do you think are useful for students to learn to be able to survive in a market? Because I guess, well, you talked a little bit about it, but I feel like sum it up for us a bit. Yeah, what skills do you think they should pay attention to learn?
So right now, I think everybody should know how data is being acquired right now and how data is being used. So if everybody can learn that, even if they can't necessarily do that, they need to understand how it works. It's just like how when we were growing up, everybody needed to understand, what am I going to say? Like some basic mathematics, even though like they may or may not use them in the future. They just need to know some of these things to understand. Because before I became a developer, I was one of those that once I saw dark screen, colored text, I'm like, this person is performing magic. I have no idea what they are doing. Like, I don't want to know, like, how did they even learn this?
Yeah.
And then I started learning and I saw that there was no big deal. It's just, so now when I look at some applications or even when I look at like this camera or something, I'm actually thinking of the workings. Okay, this might be this. This has to happen for this to happen. But I don't build microphones. I don't build cameras or lamps or anything. But helping me to understand how it works, like understanding how it works, helps me to understand how to appreciate the technology. So that's like on a day-to-day. But if you mean like career-wise, I mean like people need to, let's say, even if you want to be in technology, one of the basic things is to learn to write. Everybody wouldn't be writing code, but just to understand like how code works. Yeah, to understand also how AIs are trained. If you understand how AIs are trained, and understand also the security aspects of it, what is right and what is wrong. And just like we said before, right and wrong is relative. But if you understand that, okay, when you see this, you should be able to call this out, that this is not right, then like those are some basic things that people should know. But if you're saying, oh, what career should they go into? I mean, it's just open to people. It's based on what people prefer or not prefer. But there are just basic things that people should know, which is having a background understanding of how some things could work, like understanding how to think about design. So if you can understand how to think about design, then I think it would fit in almost anywhere.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you so much for coming today.
And thank you.
Good luck with, we'll have to have you back actually, because I'm sure people will be really interested in this talk. But good luck with everything in the future. And thanks again, Chioma. Have a great rest of the day.
You too,
Everybody else too. Yeah, bye.
Bye.
Guest on this episode of Beyond the Prompt was Chioma Onyekpere. Host was Monika Vrecher. Recording was produced by University of Manitoba's Faculty of Arts Media Lab. Editing was done by Akamjit Singh and Monika Vrecher. This podcast is sponsored by Strategic Initiative Support Fund and University of Manitoba's Faculty of Arts.